Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years.
Hillary Clinton, and as you know, most people know, she's a world-class liar.
And I've known her and her husband for years, and I really like them both a lot.
Hillary Clinton is unfit to lead our country, certainly at this time. I think she's unfit.
Well, I know her, and she'd make a good president or a good vice president.
It is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. Drain the swamp. We are going to drain the swamp. Goldman Sachs and Citibank have him totally under control, folks. Believe me, okay?
Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs.
More breaking news at a busy hour. Charlie Gasparino in the newsroom has word of a possible cabinet appointment. What do you have, Charlie?
Well, at least a consideration, Connell, and this is big for Wall Street because, this is one of the major players on Wall Street. And what sources are telling the Fox Business Network is that Goldman COO, Gary Cohn, he's the #2 guy there, to Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO, is also being considered for Energy Secretary after his meeting with President-elect Donald Trump earlier in the week.
Goldman Sachs.
Gary Cohn, the chief operating officer of Goldman Sachs, is going to become the third former Goldman Sachs executive to chair the National Economic Council.
Goldman Sachs.
Steve Mnuchin and Steve Bannon both formerly worked at Goldman Sachs, and the firm's current chief operating officer, Gary Cohn, is now being considered to lead the Office of Management.
Goldman Sachs.
As soon as he gets to the White House, suddenly all he wants is the approval of the Manhattan fancy people. He sure didn't care for the 18 months he was running. So the shallow course ignoramus, yes, it was a selling point because he didn't care what people thought of him. Now all he wants is for Goldman Sachs to like him.
You know, we don't manufacture anything anymore in this country. We do health care, we do lots of different services, but the big service is manufacturing. Everything's made in China.
Well, right now we're losing $500 billion with China, so on a yearly basis. We're losing so much money. They've taken so many jobs.
This is the one that's hardest to believe of all. America has lost 70,000 factories since China entered the World Trade Organization.
Well, there is a lot happening when it comes to our current state of situation with trade negotiations in China. President Trump now offering to help save jobs at Chinese telecom giant ZTE.
Let me just put you in a situation, a professional situation. You just got out of Wharton Business School, you're out practicing, you're an accountant, your client comes to you and says, I'm scared to death. Some crazy guy wants to put a tax on everybody who owns more than $10 million. How do you protect me? What would you say?
Well, I'd start off by saying the man must be brilliant. The economy would boom. We'd have no debt. Hey, I know about debt, probably as much as anybody. I've had too much, and I've had too little. And you know what? Too little is much better, believe me. I would let people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year pay some tax, because right now they're paying very little tax, and I think it's outrageous. I want to lower taxes for the middle class. I want to lower taxes for people that are making a lot of money that need incentives.
You'd like to raise taxes on yourself in this instance.
That's right. I'm okay with it.
And just as I promised the American people from this podium 11 months ago, we enacted the biggest tax cuts and reforms in American history.
And there's also a lot of confusion about the tax plan. President Trump says a Republican tax plan will not benefit wealthy Americans.
The rich will not be gaining at all with this plan. The wealthy will be pretty much where they are. Pretty much where they are.
The Koch brothers are now poised to gain $1 billion every single year thanks to the Republican tax cut package that was recently signed into law.
The wealthiest family in America gets a $52 billion tax break as a result of the repeal of the estate tax.
That's correct.
Tell the American people why you think that's good when you cut Medicaid and you cut programs for kids.
House Speaker Paul Ryan has deleted his tweet about the GOP tax reform after facing backlash. He mentioned a news report about a secretary who gets an extra $1.50 a week because of tax cuts.
You looked almost giddy when you banged that gavel yesterday and voted on this tax reform. I know you've worked on it for a very long time. And by far, the biggest tax cut here, the cut in rate, is going to corporations. Their tax rate goes from 35% to 21%. As I understand your argument and that of your colleagues, you're counting on corporations to take that money they now have and plow it right back into the economy, hire people, raise wages. It doesn't work if they don't do that. Is that correct?
No, all the studies show us that that is exactly what does happen.
4 months after the corporate rate was cut to 21% from 35%, bonus news has slowed. Fewer than 45 of the 500 big companies in the S&P 500 stock index have paid cash bonuses, Bank of America says. A separate analysis by Americans for Tax Fairness estimates that about 125 companies have received about $61 billion in total tax cuts, which is 9 times more than the $6.5 billion workers have gotten in bonuses and raises. So where's all the money going? Companies are using some of the cash to expand their businesses and pay down debt, but a big chunk of the cash is being returned to shareholders.
Welcome back to Harley. You certainly talked a good game, and nothing says you're fighting for the little guy, of course, than another big tax cut for the rich. And that's exactly what the president's up to right now.
Obamacare is going to be repealed and replaced. Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not.
The Senate's plan to repeal and replace Obamacare facing an uphill climb. The Congressional Budget Office predicting that the plan would leave millions more Americans uninsured while raising premiums for some of the most vulnerable.
We will build a great wall along the southern border, and Mexico will pay for the wall. I will build a great wall on our southern border.
That's a Trump wall, beautiful wall.
I will build the greatest wall that you've ever seen.
They ever put my name on? I want a gorgeous wall. You know? The Trump wall, oh, will that be a beautiful wall?
Yes, Donald Trump wants to build a wall on the US-Mexican border, and based on his tone, he also wants to f*** that wall.
We're going to build a wall. It's going to be a great wall.
Mexico to pay for that
Mexico's going to pay for it.
They're going to pay for the wall, and they're going to enjoy it, okay?
Who's going to pay for the wall?
100%.
Our top story this half hour, paying for the wall along the Mexico border. Reports say that the president-elect is planning to ask Congress to pay for it. That means the American taxpayers, a sharp contrast from his campaign promises.
The president is asking Congress for $1.5 billion toward the wall for what's left of this year, and then $2.6 billion in fiscal 2018, which, by the way, begins October 1st. And that $2.6 billion would be a sort of down payment.
We spend $2 trillion in Iraq. Thousands of lives of great people, mostly great, young, beautiful people, wounded warriors who I love all over the place, Not treated properly, by the way. We've destabilized the Middle East, and it's a mess. I will never send our finest into battle unless necessary, and I mean absolutely necessary, and will only do so if we have a plan for victory with the capital V. America First will be the major and overriding theme of my administration.
Well, President Trump announcing a historic budget boost, bringing more money to our military. Cheryl Casoni from our sister network, Fox Business, is here to break down this big boost. And where are we going to get the money, Cheryl?
Yeah, exactly. That's the big question, right? Good morning, guys. Well, it would be one of the largest increases in history for defense spending. President Trump is planning to ask for a $54 billion increase in military spending.
I ordered the United States Armed Forces to launch precision strikes on targets associated with the chemical weapons capabilities of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. A combined operation with the armed forces of France and the United Kingdom is now underway. We thank them both.
I thought General Mattis's statement, the Secretary of Defense, was fantastic yesterday, and that seemed to be returning to the Trump policy on the campaign, which is, I mean, how many times did he have to say it? He's not just he's not running to be president of the world, but president of America. He put our interests first. And yeah, it's very hard to explain this Syrian attack. It is certainly not a vital national security interest.
And that's what makes it so bad.
Well, I think I did a much better job. I built a massive company, a great company, some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world.
The banks stood in line to lend Trump money, and he borrowed billions. He went on a spending spree and bought what he called his trophies, a $1 billion building built on borrowed money, junk bonds, with the whopping interest rate of 14%. Trump was now $1.4 billion in debt on his casinos alone. The casinos that bore his name, the Trump Taj Mahal, Trump Castle, and Trump Plaza, all went bankrupt.
Anybody who took the ride for the long term has lost 99% of their money.
I started with a $1 million loan. I agree with that. It's a $1 million loan, but I built a phenomenal company.
In 1979, he took out $5.7 million in 22 separate loans from either his father personally or his father's companies. By 1985, he owed $14 million in loans to his father, $3 million to him personally, and $11 million to his companies.
The website PolitiFact checked 77 of his statements and rated 76% of them as varying degrees of false. And I've witnessed this firsthand. He once attacked my old boss by tweeting, "If Jon Stewart is so above it all and legit, why did he change his name from Jonathan Leibowitz? He should be proud of his heritage." And then 2 years later wrote, "I never attacked dopey Jon Stewart for his phony last name. Would never do that." And then, just last year, he claimed, falsely, to have turned down an invite to appear on this very boring show. And who's he trying to impress with that lie? Our show's guests include sloths and puppies. We're basically a petting zoo with a desk. But when we pointed out that he had never been invited, this is how he responded.
All of a sudden, I see people saying that John Oliver, and I'm saying, John Oliver? And I checked with my people. He asked me to be on the show 4 or 5 times. And I don't even hardly know who he was. I wouldn't know what he looks like.
Well, look, first, I wouldn't expect him to know who I was, although for his inevitable angry tweet about this segment, I'll tell him what I look like. I look like a nearsighted parrot who works at a bank. But secondly, it was genuinely destabilising to be on the receiving end of a lie that confident. I even checked to make sure that no one had even accidentally invited him. And of course they hadn't. And I'm not even sure he knows he's lying. I think he just doesn't care about what the truth is. Donald Trump views the truth like this lemur views the Supreme Court vacancy. I don't care about that in any way. Please f*** off, I have a banana.